Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever stood on the edge of something greater? Something you know God has prepared for you, but felt the weight of fear, doubt, and delay pulling you back? Imagine standing right outside the gates of your destiny, the promise within reach, yet the question remains, will you step in or will you settle where you are? The wilderness is temporary because it is never meant to be the final destination. It is a season of testing, shaping, and refining that prepares a person for the greater promise ahead. When someone finds themselves in a wilderness season, it often feels like a place of delay, frustration, or even punishment, but in reality, it is a classroom where faith is strengthened and character is built. The wilderness teaches dependence on God when resources are scarce, clarity when distractions are stripped away, and perseverance when the road feels uncertain. It reveals the true foundation of trust, because without the wilderness, one may enter the promise unprepared to handle its weight. The wilderness is temporary because God uses it as a process, not as a permanent residence. When you choose to see the wilderness not as a prison, but as preparation, your perspective shifts from hopelessness to expectation. It becomes the ground where patience is developed, where you learn to wait on divine timing instead of rushing into your own plans. Choosing yourself in this context means deciding to embrace the refining season instead of resisting it, allowing it to mold you rather than break you. The wilderness strips away false securities so that you can step into the promise with strength, humility, and wisdom. When you choose yourself, you also choose to trust that God has placed value and purpose in you that is being refined in the wilderness. Many people waste the season by complaining, comparing, or doubting, but the wilderness becomes a place of transformation when you see it as temporary. In every dry place, lessons are hidden. In every delay, strength is being forged. By choosing yourself, you commit to seeing the process as part of the journey to the promise rather than as an obstacle. The wilderness is temporary because it is designed to push you forward, not keep you stagnant. In history, every person who entered a promise had to endure a wilderness. The Israelites spent years wandering, not because the wilderness was meant to trap them, but because their mindset was not ready for the promise. The length of the wilderness is often determined by how quickly you learn the lessons it offers. Choosing yourself in the wilderness means refusing to stay stuck in cycles of fear, doubt, or disobedience. It means deciding to rise above frustration and focus on preparation. Every wilderness ends when growth is complete. If you carry a wilderness mindset into the promise, you may lose what you were given because promises demand maturity. The wilderness forces you to let go of the old and prepare for the new. It strips away the comfort zones and teaches resilience. By choosing yourself, you remind yourself that this season is not forever and that you are worthy of stepping into greater things. The wilderness highlights weaknesses, but also develops inner strength. What feels like emptiness is often a setup for fullness. The wilderness is temporary because promises are permanent. No matter how long it lasts, it cannot cancel what God has already prepared. It may delay, but it cannot deny. When you choose yourself, you align your heart with this truth. You are not meant to stay in the wilderness. You are meant to pass through it, learn from it, and come out stronger, wiser, and prepared. Preparation comes before promise because no great destiny is ever handed over without readiness. A promise is God's assurance of what is to come, but preparation is the process that equips you to handle it. If the promise arrives without preparation, it can crush instead of bless, overwhelm instead of uplift. Preparation develops the discipline, the patience, and the resilience needed to sustain the promise once it manifests. It is the training ground where you are shaped into the person who can live inside the reality God has spoken over your life. Without preparation, a promise becomes wasted potential, but with preparation, it becomes the fulfillment of destiny. Preparation comes before promise because the heart must be aligned before the hands can receive. Many people desire the reward without the process, but every true promise requires a period of molding. The waiting season is not punishment, it is protection. It ensures that you are ready in character, wisdom, and faith. Choosing yourself in this journey means accepting that the waiting is necessary, that the slow work of growth cannot be skipped, and that the promise will arrive at the right time. To choose yourself here is to choose patience over panic, growth over shortcuts, and faith over frustration. Preparation is where God deals with the inner person before blessing the outer situation. If he places someone in a promised land while their mindset is still stuck in the wilderness, they will sabotage what was meant to be permanent. Preparation breaks cycles of fear, doubt, insecurity, and disobedience. It equips a person to step into opportunities without being destroyed by them. When you choose yourself in this stage, you embrace the refining process instead of resisting it. You begin to see the training as valuable, the stretching as necessary, and the delays as divine strategy. Preparation comes before promise because battles await inside every blessing. The promise is not free from challenges. In fact, stepping into greater territory means facing greater giants. Without preparation, those giants intimidate. With preparation, they become defeated. Choosing yourself in preparation means deciding to strengthen your faith, sharpen your skills, and deepen your obedience before the promise unfolds. It is in preparation that courage is built, vision is clarified, and endurance is formed. The greater the promise, the deeper the preparation, because the weight of destiny requires strong shoulders. Preparation also exposes hidden weaknesses so they can be healed before the promise arrives. If a person carries bitterness, pride, or immaturity into the promise, those flaws will magnify under pressure. The preparation season acts as a mirror, showing what needs transformation. When you choose yourself, you accept this process of self-examination and growth. You recognize that the journey is not about speed, but about strength. The wilderness of preparation is never wasted because it ensures that once you step into the promise, you are able to remain there. Preparation comes before promise because promises are not just blessings, they are responsibilities. A greater calling requires stewardship, leadership, and maturity. Choosing yourself means positioning your mind, heart, and actions to align with that responsibility. It means investing in personal growth, building spiritual discipline, and learning obedience even when it is uncomfortable. The promise will not wait for someone who is careless, distracted, or unwilling to grow. It will manifest for those who have prepared themselves in faith, in action, and in mindset. Preparation is the bridge between where you are and where you are called to be. Choosing yourself in that space means committing to the journey, no matter how long or difficult, trusting that every moment of preparation is leading you closer to the promise already written for you. Faith over fear is the posture of trusting what God has promised instead of surrendering to what circumstances threaten. Fear magnifies obstacles. Faith magnifies possibilities. Fear looks at giants and sees defeat. Faith looks at giants and sees opportunity for victory. Fear says you are not enough. Faith declares God is more than enough. Choosing faith over fear is not denying reality. It is choosing to believe that God's word carries more weight than the uncertainty in front of you. Every great move of destiny requires courage, and courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act on faith in spite of it. Faith over fear becomes critical when the path to the promise is uncertain. Fear always whispers that the wilderness will last forever, that the giants are too big, that the walls will never fall. Faith counters with the truth that God has already prepared the way. When you choose yourself, you choose to silence fear's voice and feed faith with trust, prayer, and action. Choosing yourself means aligning your heart with the belief that you are not defined by fear's intimidation, but by God's declaration. Fear restricts, faith releases. Fear paralyzes, faith propels. Faith over fear shapes the mindset required to enter the promise. Many people remain stuck in cycles of hesitation because fear convinces them they are unqualified. Faith, however, reminds them that God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Choosing yourself here means deciding to believe that you are chosen, equipped, and empowered even if the evidence around you says otherwise. Fear thrives on uncertainty, but faith thrives on assurance. The more you lean into faith, the less authority fear has over your decisions. Faith over fear transforms how challenges are perceived. To the fearful, every obstacle is a barrier. To the faithful, every obstacle is a stepping stone. When the Israelites saw the land of promise, fear focused on giants, while faith focused on grapes that proved the land's fruitfulness. The difference between the two perspectives determined who entered and who remained behind. Choosing yourself in this context means deciding to see beyond limitations, training your eyes to focus on promise rather than problem. Fear exaggerates what stands against you, but faith magnifies the God who stands with you. Faith over fear builds resilience. Fear makes you retreat at the first sign of opposition, while faith teaches you to endure, to fight, and to trust through the storm. The road to the promise is never smooth, and without faith, fear will convince you to quit too early. Choosing yourself means standing firm in moments when fear pushes you to surrender. It means reminding yourself that faith does not remove battles, but it assures victory. Fear only sees the fire, faith sees the fourth man standing inside it. Faith over fear also determines the atmosphere of your life. Fear breeds anxiety, worry, and doubt. Faith produces peace, strength, and expectation. When you choose yourself, you make the intentional decision to cultivate an environment where faith flourishes and fear loses its grip. It requires feeding your spirit with truth, surrounding yourself with encouragement, and rejecting voices that reinforce fear. The more you choose faith daily, the more natural it becomes to resist fear's lies. Faith over fear is the decision to live aligned with God's promises instead of trapped by human limitations. When you choose yourself in this principle, you decide that fear will not have the final word over your life. You choose to step forward when fear says step back, to believe when fear says doubt, to rise when fear says quit. Faith ensures that you not only see the promise, but also have the courage to enter and possess it. Victory is guaranteed because when God makes a promise, no obstacle, enemy, or delay has the power to overturn it. The battles may be fierce, but the outcome is already secured. The guarantee of victory does not mean there will be no struggles. It means that struggles cannot cancel destiny. Giants may rise, walls may stand tall, and opposition may surround, yet victory is assured because it is rooted in God's authority, not human ability. Choosing yourself in this truth means refusing to live defeated when you are already declared victorious. It is the decision to walk with confidence, not because the path is easy, but because the outcome is promised. Victory is guaranteed because God's word never returns void. When he declares a promise, it is as good as done, even if it has not yet manifested in your life. Fear and doubt may suggest otherwise, but faith holds on to the certainty of his commitment. Choosing yourself here means deciding to align your thoughts and actions with the assurance of victory, instead of the appearance of defeat. It is refusing to settle in discouragement and instead preparing for triumph even before it arrives. You choose yourself when you choose to believe that the final chapter is already written in your favor. Victory is guaranteed because God fights battles on behalf of those who trust him. The Israelites did not topple Jericho's walls by their own strength, but by obedience to divine instruction. David did not defeat Goliath with physical power, but with faith in a God who delivers. In the same way, your victory is not dependent on your resources, but on God's power. Choosing yourself in this place means stepping into the battlefield with confidence that the victory has already been secured. It is the boldness to act, even when the odds seem impossible, because you know who is backing you. Victory is guaranteed because every struggle has an expiration date. Pain, hardship, and resistance may last for a season, but none of them can outlast God's promise. The wilderness does not last forever, storms do not rage without end, and enemies cannot hold ground permanently. Choosing yourself means remembering that the pressure you face today is temporary while the victory ahead is permanent. It means holding on when fear says let go, standing firm when weariness whispers to quit, and continuing forward with the assurance that breakthrough is closer than it looks. Victory is guaranteed because God equips his people with what they need for the battle. He does not send anyone into the fight unprepared. Strength, wisdom, endurance, and courage are forged in the waiting season, so that when the time comes, you are ready to overcome. Choosing yourself means embracing the preparation instead of despising it, because every lesson learned becomes a weapon for the fight. The victory is not won when you finally step into the promise. It is being shaped in every small act of obedience, every choice to believe, and every refusal to quit. Victory is guaranteed because the enemy has already been defeated. The cross marked the turning point where death, fear, and darkness lost their ultimate power. Every battle faced now is not about whether victory will come, but about walking into what is already secured. Choosing yourself here means living with a winner's mindset, refusing to bow to intimidation, and carrying yourself with the confidence of one who knows the outcome. It is shifting from survival mode to victory mode, understanding that you are not fighting for victory, but from a place of victory. Victory is guaranteed, and when you choose yourself in this truth, you decide to live as a conqueror instead of a captive. You step forward in faith, act in courage, and refuse to allow fear or failure to define your story. The guarantee of victory allows you to pursue the promise with strength, knowing that the outcome is not in doubt, but already sealed. Obedience is essential because promises are always tied to instruction. God does not simply hand over blessings without requiring alignment to His will. The path to the promise is marked by steps of obedience, and each step unlocks the next level of provision. Disobedience delays destiny, but obedience accelerates it. Choosing yourself in this truth means committing to follow divine direction, even when it does not make sense, even when it stretches you beyond comfort, even when it asks for trust without a visible roadmap. Obedience is not optional. It is the foundation that determines whether you walk into the fullness of the promise or remain outside its gates. Obedience is essential because it is the ultimate demonstration of trust. Faith without obedience is incomplete, for true belief shows itself through action. When God speaks, He is not testing knowledge, but testing willingness. Choosing yourself means saying yes to His guidance and surrendering your preferences in exchange for His perfect plan. It is choosing to act even when emotions resist, when fear whispers doubt, and when logic cannot see the outcome. Every act of obedience becomes a seed planted in the soil of promise. And those seeds always bring a harvest. Obedience is essential because blessings are conditional. Throughout history, those who stepped into victory did so by following divine instructions precisely. Noah built an ark when rain had never fallen. Abraham left his homeland without knowing the destination, and Joshua marched around Jericho in silence before walls fell. None of these victories happened by chance. They were the result of obedience to unusual instructions. Choosing yourself here means deciding that you will not compromise when obedience feels inconvenient. It means valuing alignment with God's will above the approval of people or the comfort of shortcuts. Obedience is essential because it positions you for protection and provision. Disobedience often leads to unnecessary battles and pain, while obedience places you under the covering of divine favor. Choosing yourself means choosing to trust that God's commands are not meant to restrict you, but to release you into greater freedom and security. What looks like sacrifice in obedience often becomes the very thing that preserves your destiny. The cost of obedience is always less than the cost of disobedience. And choosing yourself means you value your long-term promise over temporary convenience. Obedience is essential because it proves readiness for the promise. A person who cannot obey in the wilderness will not obey in the promise. And without obedience, the promise cannot be sustained. The greater the promise, the greater the demand for consistent obedience. Choosing yourself here means embracing discipline, learning to deny impulses, and living with integrity even when no one is watching. It is saying yes to the process that molds character, so that when the promise comes, you are prepared not only to receive it, but to carry it well. Obedience is essential because it invites divine partnership. God does what only He can do, but He requires you to do what you can. When you obey, you open the door for His power to intervene. When Peter cast his net at Jesus' word, the miracle followed his act of obedience. Choosing yourself means choosing to be a vessel through which God's power can flow. It means being available, responsive, and ready to move when called. The miracle is often waiting on the other side of obedience. Obedience is essential, and choosing yourself in this principle means making the daily decision to align your will with God's will. It means rejecting compromise, silencing excuses, and walking faithfully even when the path is unfamiliar. Every act of obedience draws you closer to the promise and ensures that when you enter it, you are able to remain there with strength and blessing. Step boldly into the promise, because hesitation can cost you opportunities that God has already prepared. The promise is not meant to be admired from a distance, but entered with courage. Too often people remain standing at the edge of destiny, paralyzed by what-ifs, regrets, or fear of failure. To step boldly means to cross the line from waiting into walking, from hoping into possessing. Choosing yourself in this moment means deciding that you will not allow fear or doubt to keep you from what is already yours. It means moving forward even when the path looks uncertain, trusting that every step taken in faith is a step into fulfillment. Step boldly into the promise, because the door of opportunity will not stay open forever. Just as the Israelites had to cross the Jordan at the appointed time, so there are seasons when God calls for immediate action. Delay can lead to missed blessings, but boldness ensures you seize the moment. Choosing yourself means rejecting procrastination and embracing readiness. It means telling yourself that you are worthy of walking into abundance, that the season of wandering is over, and that your feet are strong enough to claim the land set before you. Bold steps break cycles of hesitation and usher you into the reality of the promise. Step boldly into the promise, because victory requires movement. Walls do not fall while you stand still, and giants are not defeated by watching from the sidelines. The promise demands action that aligns with faith. Boldness is the fuel that propels you past opposition and into possession. Choosing yourself here means silencing the inner voice that says you are not enough and amplifying the truth that God has already gone ahead of you. Boldness is not arrogance. It is confidence rooted in divine assurance. When you choose yourself, you declare that you will not shrink back, but rise up to claim what has been guaranteed. Step boldly into the promise, because boldness inspires others. When you move forward with courage, you create a path for others to follow. Your willingness to step into destiny shows those around you that the promise is attainable. Choosing yourself means acknowledging that your boldness has generational impact. It means realizing that your step of faith may unlock the courage in others to step into their own promises. Fear isolates, but boldness multiplies. Every step you take toward your promise lights the way for someone else to do the same. Step boldly into the promise, because boldness defeats the lies of the enemy. The enemy thrives on intimidation, using fear to keep you from advancing. But when you step forward boldly, you demonstrate that his threats have no power over you. Choosing yourself here means breaking free from the chains of past failures, disappointments, and doubts. It means deciding that you will no longer be defined by what went wrong, but by what lies ahead. Boldness is a declaration that you refuse to settle for less when God has promised more. Step boldly into the promise, because destiny is never for the passive. The promise requires commitment, sacrifice, and the willingness to embrace responsibility. Boldness equips you to handle the weight of the promise once you enter it. Choosing yourself means deciding that you are ready to carry what belongs to you, not in fear, but in confidence. It is choosing to act as a steward of the blessings, opportunities, and responsibilities that come with the promise. Boldness ensures you not only enter the promise, but thrive within it. Step boldly into the promise, because hesitation robs joy, but action fulfills purpose. Every promise is waiting for a response, and boldness is the key that unlocks it. When you choose yourself, you choose to stop standing at the edge and start walking into the fullness of what was spoken over your life. Boldness is the bridge between preparation and possession, between wilderness and destiny. The promise is real, the victory is secured, and the only step left is yours.